Ryuga Gotoku had decidedly become a genre-redefining game. To speed up the development, a small group of planners and designers were assigned to create the substories found around Kamurocho. Unfortunately, the substories weren't created until the plot was completely fleshed out and the world itself had started to take shape, so the time limit to get these written and scripted was shockingly short. This led to some interesting development strategies. With the restricted time limit, they accepted ideas for substories from around the development team, then categorized them based on what they pertain to. For example, something that adds to the character's backstory, ones that are silly, or the more expensive stories that show a unique scene. The small team ended up scripting and even mocapping themselves. The end result of their hard work was an alive-feeling Kamurocho and memorable sub-stories that played alongside the main plot. The mocap studio, meanwhile, was pushed to their limits with the main story. Their job wasn't just as simple as recording actions. Some of the more intense scenes and heat actions required a wire-fu technique to perform. The team also had to memorize the lines and nuances for multiple characters in order to capture their facial expressions. Even though the scenes would eventually be dubbed over by professional voice actors, the team was forced to memorize the long conversations found in each cutscene. There was constant pressure to get things right in a single take in order to keep the development budget down. The mocap division was headed by Jun Orihara, whose official title was lead researcher and supervisor of the battle team. But at the time, Jun had no real experience shooting mocap and was thrust into the role without understanding exactly how it worked. To help, he hired a studio called Alpha Stunts to create the dangerous stunt work. Alpha Stunts was amazed with the action they were hired to do for a video game. Typically, their high-caliber stunts were reserved for making action movies. Motion capture allowed the actors more creative freedom by tracking their bodies via sensors and creating a wireframe of their actions. At first, Jun embarrassed himself by searching for a camera in order to block, a film technique to direct a scene. He was so inexperienced that he didn't know how mocap created a 3D model that could be manipulated later to each scene. Kiryu's actions were actually performed by multiple stunt people that specialized in different areas like fighting and acrobatics. The mocap team became as close as a family, typically drinking the night away before returning for more stunt work the following day. In the end, Jun Orihara actually ended up with his voice in the game as Komaki, and still continues to play him today. The sound department suffered a more difficult fate thanks to Nagoshi's almost micromanaging. For the bulk of the game, he simply dictated the type of feeling he wanted the game to have. The streets would be crammed and busy with the hustle and bustle reflected in the sound design. To create the main game music, Nagoshi approached Hidenori Shoji, who had been a composer at Sega since 1996. Shoji-san became Nagoshi's go-to musician in 1998 when they worked on the music for Spike Out together, and later went on to collaborate on the music for Super Monkey Ball and F-Zero GX before starting work on Ryuga Gotoku. I have an interesting project. Nagoshi explained the general premise of his new series to Shoji and the criminal underworld in which it was set. After hearing all this, Shoji-san thought, look at what I've gotten myself into. This was, of course, while already coming up with ideas in his head about the kind of music that would best suit a game like this. Nagoshi explained that the dark nature of the game, together with the Showa-era feel they were going for, would be best represented using a techno-rock fusion with a Japanese spin. Shoji-san got to work, but was still unsure which direction to go. The game's theme song, Receive You, was developed to set the musical tone for the rest of the game. He didn't just develop one version though. No, it took 30 different variations of the theme to find something Nagoshi would approve of. It had to perfectly represent this new game after all. The earlier attempts at the track sounded more like techno, while the final version ended up with a darker and more Japanese feeling. It wasn't the first song actually finalized for the game though, presumably because they had to record so many versions. That award instead goes to the dark scene setting track heard throughout Kamurocho, Unrest. Following that was the battle theme Funk Goes On, and finally, after much trial and error, the theme song for Ryuga Gotoku was completed. The music wasn't the only important sound in the game though. Nagoshi and Kikuchi listened to lots of audition tapes before finally settling on Takaya Kuroda as the voice of the main protagonist, Kazuma Kiryu. In interviews, they both spoke about this process with Nagoshi-san, describing Kuroda-san as having a natural voice that was low yet elegant. This fit Kiryu's image perfectly. Kikuchi suggested Kuroda-san's voice perfectly encompassed the image of a venomous yet sensual hero they were looking for. Kiryu will always be Kuroda-san, and couldn't be played by anyone else. When they recorded lines, Kuroda-san performed about 3 different takes, and the team selected the best fit. By contrast to the careful selection of Kiryu's voice, Majima was chosen in Nagoshi's absence. Yokoyama told Ugaki to just play him as absolutely crazy. That advice is what led Majima to speak the way he does. Nagoshi apparently felt it was overdone, but Yokoyama had such confidence in it that it was allowed. It even worked well with the bitter elements of Majima's personality in the end too, and he became a hugely popular character. Nagoshi described this whole ordeal in an interview, stating Majima is a miracle that came from my absence. Nagoshi and Kikuchi had the idea to add product tie-ins to make the game more realistic, but like everything to do with the creation of Ryuga Gotoku, they were excited and ambitious. But would it be possible to convince business owners that having Yakuza endorse their products was a good idea?